Right now, you're probably reading this at some point between waking up and going to bed, and you haven't thought twice about that schedule. You wake up when it's light, you get tired when it's dark, it feels automatic, almost boring, like it's just how days work. But that split, awake in daylight, asleep in darkness, is one of the oldest behavioral patterns humans have ever had. It's older than fire, older than language, older than the species itself. And the question is, how did our bodies end up hardwired to a schedule set by a giant ball of light 93 million miles away? To answer that, you have to go back further than humans. Way further. Back about 4 billion years to the earliest single-celled organisms on Earth. These cells had a problem. Sunlight carried harmful UV radiation, and DNA replication is most vulnerable during certain chemical phases. So the cells that survived were the ones that happened to replicate their DNA at night, avoiding the sun's damage. The ones that didn't, their DNA got cooked, mutated, and eventually wiped out. That single pressure, protect your DNA from UV light, is the root of something called the circadian rhythm, and it's baked into nearly every living thing on the planet, from bacteria to fungi to plants to us. Here's the wild part. Think about that. A biological habit that started in organisms too small to see with the naked eye is still running the show in your body today. You didn't invent your bedtime. Evolution did, billions of years before bedrooms existed. Fast forward a few billion years, and that ancient internal clock is still running inside every human cell, controlled by a tiny cluster of about 20,000 neurons in your brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Researchers studying circadian biology, including work that won the 2017 Nobel Prize in Physiology, showed that this cluster acts like a master pacemaker, syncing your body to roughly a 24-hour cycle using light hitting your eyes as the trigger. Light hits your retina, a signal fires to this cluster, and your body adjusts hormone release, body temperature, and alertness accordingly. You didn't choose this. Your ancestors' were running on this exact system before there were ancestors that looked anything like humans at all. But here's the thing. Having a body clock is one thing. Actually surviving the night is a completely different problem, and that's where the story gets interesting. For early hominins living in East Africa a few million years ago, the day-night split wasn't just biological background noise. It was survival. Daytime was for foraging, tracking, and traveling, when human eyesight, one of our best tools, actually worked. Human eyes are terrible in darkness compared to most predators. We have no night vision to speak of. Nighttime, meanwhile, was full of animals built specifically to hunt in the dark. Big cats with reflective eyes, hyenas with bone-crushing jaws, snakes that can sense body heat. A human without fire or shelter who wandered around at 2 a.m. was significantly more likely to become dinner than to make it to sunrise. So natural selection didn't just allow the sleep at night pattern to continue, it aggressively punished anyone who deviated from it. The night wanderers didn't get a second chance to pass on their genes. Here's what makes this so important. This isn't a small side detail in human history. This fear of the dark, this instinct to seek shelter and stillness once the sun goes down, may be one of the single biggest forces that shaped early human social behavior. Groups that huddled together at night, that built basic shelters, that eventually gathered around a source of light, survived at higher rates than isolated individuals. In a strange way, the terror of nighttime predators may have helped push early humans toward the tight social bonds that define us today. Then, sometime around 1 to 1.5 million years ago, evidence from sites like Wonderwork Cave in South Africa suggests early humans started controlling fire. That changes everything, or at least it should have. Fire meant light after dark, protection from predators, and warmth. Fire meant you could finally push back against the night just a little. But here's the thing. Even with fire, sleep patterns didn't flip. They barely budged. Anthropologist Carol Worthman's research on the Hadza and other modern hunter-gatherer groups who still live largely without electric light found that even they go to sleep a few hours after sunset and wake before sunrise, with almost no meaningful difference from the pattern we'd expect in pre-industrial humans tens of thousands of years ago. Fire extended the evening by an hour or two, telling stories, eating, socializing. It didn't rewire millions of years of biology. The body clock won. Around 10,000 years ago, agriculture showed up, and suddenly the sun mattered even more, not less. Crops needed tending in daylight. Livestock needed managing on a schedule tied to sunrise and sunset. Farming societies built entire calendars and eventually entire religions around the sun's movement across the sky. Waking with the sun stopped being just a survival habit passed down through instinct. It became a cultural, economic, and even spiritual requirement. But then, something genuinely disruptive happened. Something bigger than fire, bigger than farming. The invention of artificial light. Gas lamps started spreading through cities in the 1800s, and then Thomas Edison's incandescent bulb arrived in 1879, giving humans something they never had in their entire evolutionary history. Cheap, easy, on-demand control over darkness itself. For the first time ever, night didn't have to mean stopping. Historian A. Roger E. Kirch's research on pre-industrial sleep uncovered something most people have never heard of. Before artificial lighting became widespread, many people actually slept in two separate segments through the night, with a period of quiet wakefulness in between, sometimes used for prayer, conversation, or just lying in the dark thinking. Kirch called this pattern segmented sleep, and it shows up again and again in old diaries, court records, and literature from before the 1800s. Once electric light spread through homes and cities, that two-part pattern collapsed into the single continuous block of sleep most of us know today. Think about that. Our current normal sleep schedule has only existed for less than 150 years, sitting on top of a system that took millions of years to build. And here's the twist that makes this even more interesting. Your body still doesn't fully believe the modern world exists. Studies on shift workers, published in journals like the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology, show consistently higher rates of metabolic issues, mood disorders, weight gain, and sleep disruption in people who work overnight shifts for years at a time. Your circadian system is still, on a cellular level, expecting you to be a daylight forager who rests when the sun goes down. It has no concept of a night shift factory job, a 24-hour delivery warehouse, or a hospital ER running around the clock. You can override the ancient clock with light bulbs, blackout curtains, and caffeine, but you can't fully cancel it. It's still ticking underneath everything you do, quietly out of sync with the life you've built. Same, by the way. If you've ever pulled an all-nighter and felt like your whole body was rebelling against you by 4 a.m., that wasn't just tiredness. That was several billion years of biology filing a complaint. So here's the full picture. Billions of years ago, single cells started avoiding sunlight to protect their DNA from damage. And that pattern became a built-in body clock shared by nearly all life on Earth. Early humans layered predator avoidance and daylight foraging on top of that ancient clock, turning a cellular habit into a matter of life and death. Fire extended the evening slightly, but never broke the pattern. Agriculture reinforced it even further, tying entire societies to the sun's schedule. Then, in the blink of an evolutionary eye, artificial light let us ignore the sun almost entirely, but it never actually turned the ancient clock off. So next time you're lying in bed scrolling on your phone at midnight, feeling weirdly tired even though the light from the screen is telling your brain it's still daytime, that's not just a bad habit you picked up. That's a multi-billion-year-old survival system quietly fighting back against a 150-year-old invention. Your body is still trying to keep you alive on the savannah, watching for eyes in the dark. It just doesn't know the savannah's gone. Maybe that's one of the strangest parts of being human. We're the only species that figured out how to turn night into day, and we still haven't fully figured out how to live with what we built. If you want to actually get some real sleep tonight, you might have more in common with the first humans huddled around a fire than you'd think.